but this community support for who are young.
Erin Becker, and I'm the director of the Cambridge Art Association, and this is Creative Process. My guests this evening are two of our prize winners from our 2015 National Prize Show, Jenny Olsen and Jim Banks. Welcome, Jenny and Jim.
Thank you.
And we do have another guest who might be joining us later. As you know from previous episodes, we talk about where artists' inspiration comes from and how they create their artwork. And so tonight we have a wood carver and a painter. So first I want to start by asking you, what was your first creative or artistic memory? And if you want to go first, Jim.
Okay. It's kind of funny. I didn't grow up with art. Our home was all academics and baseball. And when my little brother was in 8th grade, they were having a school dance, and I guess I was in high school. And he asked, he was supposed to make a poster, so he asked me to make the poster for him. And of course, all the art I knew was, the psychedelic album paintings, art album covers of the 60s, Grateful Dead, and that sort of thing. And so I made this poster that had, animal tracks and weird stuff with day glow and a big Y, W-H-Y question mark in the middle of it. And he took it to school and they put it up, and it was stolen.
Wow.
I was so stoked. I mean,
I say that's like the highest form of
I was
compliment
so
for
excited. Wow, someone stole it.
I love it so
That's so
much.
cool.
Yes.
Wow, so your first piece of artwork was stolen.
Was stolen.
An auspicious beginning.
Yeah, really. I didn't actually get into art until many, many years later after that. But
Wow.
that was the first.
That was the beginning?
That was the beginning, I guess.
What about you, Jenny?
Yeah,
was your first piece of art stolen?
Not really. But unlike Jim, like as far back as I can remember, like painting and drawing were part of my life. And I happened to have an uncle who stayed with us at that time, and he draws and paints constantly, and he did wonderful things. And I have my grandfather, each time he came over to visit, he would bring me an art book, not just children's art book. It's really real art books.
Oh, wow.
So I get to know Cezanne and Van Gogh, even when I was very young. But my first recollection of art, or maybe the recognition of being an artist, when I was in kindergarten,
Yeah.
and we entered this painting or art competition.
Oh, cool. In kindergarten. Wow, they
In
started you early.
kindergarten. Exactly, right. And
A
it
jury
was just
show.
like, for me, it's just like part of life. Nothing, I just drew the buildings, has play structure,
Yeah.
a little me in front. Think about that.
Yeah.
And I got second prize.
Oh, wow.
Okay, but people, I think back, they say, wow, but at that time, say,
Well,
Right.
it's like kindergarten was your first show and you got second prize. That's,
Right, I
again, a
guess.
pretty great beginning.
It's hard to improve on that.
Exactly. And but my mom said that even when I was a little kid, I drew things in 3D, and the color never getting out of a line.
Oh.
Always in there. But maybe that's why when I be adult, I became sort of love to gravitate to abstract, the getting things on all messy.
You missed your chance as a kid.
So until recently, I begin to wanted to have figures back to my painting.
Cool. Well, that's a nice segue. So thinking about where you started as artists and where you are now. And so first we're going to look at Jim's piece that's actually in our National Prize Show. It's called Catalpa Hippo Melody. And Jim, take it away. Tell us more about this piece.
Well, it actually is a part of a line of work that I've been doing for some time that has to do with growing weeds and painting and drawing weeds. I've spent the last 5 years on a crusade for myself, identifying weeds and trees. And when I was getting into identifying trees, I was reading about different kinds of trees to carve. And I had read that catalpa wood is a really nice wood to carve. And I was looking around for some. I didn't want to buy it, but I was looking around for some. And then this huge catalpa tree that was in our church parking lot fell over. And so I went over there when they were cutting it up, and I just got as much as I could out of it to put in my car and take it back to my studio. And this particular piece was a big, huge limb had been literally ripped out of the trunk of the tree.
Wow. So is catalpa like a native New England tree, or?
New England, East Coast.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a southern catalpa and a northern catalpa,
Oh, wow.
and has a really sweet smell when you work with it. It's really nice. But so this limb was literally, because it was so windy, it was literally ripped out of that trunk. And it was all jagged and a mess, and it was just sitting in my studio. I didn't quite know what to do with it. And so I just started sanding things down. I took all the bark off, and in so doing, it sort of determined its own shape, taking the bark off, and then getting into that area where the limb had been ripped out, just really sanding it down so that you could actually see it. You know, before there was just so much what I would call visual incident that it would be hard to see. But by simplifying it, it gives it sort of, you know, you can see it. And of course, the initial, you know, working title, when I looked at it, you know, it had sort of this tusky type of a thing like a hippopotamus, and so I called it Catalpa Hippo, but I wanted to give it a little lighter thing, sort of like Fantasia, the hippos that are dancing
The
ballet.
dancing ballerina.
So I added the name Melody to it, you know,
okay.
so
I love that.
give it a little bit lighter.
Now, have you done, you said that there was a whole tree, so have you done any other sculptures with other parts of the tree?
I have.
Yeah.
I've done some others. Didn't bring those with me. But
That's okay. I mean, I've had to move that one around. It would be kind of cumbersome to carry it.
Right. But I have lots of different kinds of woods that I've been carving, and you know, it's just really interesting, the different woods, just how they were. I've been doing it for very long.
The different characters. So is the catalpa wood, would you describe it as like a harder wood or a softer wood?
It's probably
like
a medium soft. It's not real hard.
Yeah.
It can be a little bit stringy. You really have to sand it down. I like working also with elm, and elm is very hard.
Interesting.
You know, and maple's very ridiculously hard. But
Yeah, I love talking with a painter is so different from talking with a sculptor, and the way that sculptors, whether they're working in wood or stone, it's like the passion for the material, and it's like, it's a very, I mean, I guess painting is the same. It's a very tactile experience, but it's very personal. It's like, what do you know?
Yes.
Yeah, you do. I will admit, when I'm alone in the gallery,
Yes.
sometimes it's like, oh.
well, I have really gotten into wood. I mean, I've worked with steel, and I've worked with plastic and
Oh, wow.
paper mache. I mean, all sorts of materials.
And you paint too, right?
And I paint as well.
Wow, you're multi-dimensional.
Well, I'm just three-dimensional.
So before we look at Jenny's piece, do you find that your painting kind of has any influence on your sculpture, or vice versa? Is there any dialogue between the two, or do you look at those as sort of different parts of your practice?
Well, they're different just in the sense of approach. My painting is I do what's called footscapes, and we might look at some later if we have time. But a footscape is taking a picture of what the ground looks like right in front of you.
Let's see
Like,
if we
let's go
have-
right. It should be
These? That
right
looks
there.
like a foot.
Yes, that's a footscape.
There
Okay.
we go.
And that's a bristly ox tongue.
Oh,
And it's like you're standing over it, taking a photograph of it down.
but
right?
this is a painting.
But this is a painting.
Wow.
Yes.
And so the connection is just in natural material, you know, things that are growing in the dirt by themselves, you know, and I'm just, actually, let's take a look at one other after this.
Okay.
Let's look at this one down here,
Well,
right there.
let's see. This
Yeah.
one?
So this is a planter that I had built,
Okay.
that I built. It's made
Yes.
out of 1/4-inch plexiglass.
Oh,
And this is this year, and it has a lot of mainly goldenrod, and there's a lot of morning glory in there too, and it has this little spinner up there, and back here are many more planters. And the idea was to go around and find dirt that's just out there in the wild and put it in there and see what grows.
Oh, so you didn't plant that stuff. It just kind of
It grows.
spontaneously.
It just spontaneously grows. And I do a photo doc of it throughout the year, and then make a little video of it as it's going from, week by week, month by month. And so it all has to do with the natural
This is
weeds
all very connected
growing,
to nature.
and the plants or the paintings themselves are all about that.
Yeah.
And then the wood sculpture is going out in the woods or wherever and finding wood and bringing it back. I don't buy it. And then all the rot and wormholes end up really defining the shape of the
Interesting.
piece
That's really interesting.
at the end of it.
Huh. So how do you think this relates to your work? No, I'm just kidding. So this is, I feel like we're taking a different step in talking about your paintings and kind of where some of that comes from. So do you want to talk about the series before we pop up the picture, or do you want to address the first image first, your big Mari and little Mari?
I think I like to have two of them together.
Okay.
Or then we could go to one.
Okay, we'll see if we
And-
can. I think we can do them one and then the
Oh,
other.
it's okay because that's a big Mari.
So we've got big Mari.
And that was like we'll say winter 2015 was just painted at most severe winter ever.
The worst winter ever. Yeah.
The worst winter
We
ever.
haven't forgotten about it yet, Jenny.
Well, actually, I did this one just for a show for a Boston City Hall for a portrait show, and because I'm basically an abstract painter, but I need to do something figurative for the show, and I look at my things like. Actually, just recent couple years, I begin to feel the need to have some figures in my painting before just like want to be abstract and wild, and feel like I need to slow down and get back and something really, really solid.
But you
Right.
can really see your abstract work. Looking at this, just seeing how it's built up with the planes and
Right.
the various colors and that
There-
sort of thing. It's
There
just
are
gorgeous.
still some abstract elements. However, it's sort of my beginning of moving towards figurative and sort of moving back to abstract again. So I don't know what it will be next. So that's what I would say. So this is the most present, well, it's summer now, but at that time, that was just winter, me, right at that moment. But if you see the other painting of mine, it's a little Mari. That was, I did a lot, when I start painting figurative work, I start having always have a little girl in white dress because I love white. It's just my favorite color. So it's just my little girl in white dress all over on different painting here and there. But most of them, they are looking this way sideways or looking back or behind.
But they're not looking straight at you.
Not straight at me.
Okay.
But this is the last one. They are actually just looking straight at you. I remember I mentioned about my uncle who did wonderful paintings and drawing, and this original title actually called Robin's Room. It means Uncle Robin's Room. Here I'm standing in front of my Uncle Robin's room.
Okay.
And this is my own abstract. Uncle Robin, his room is going, you walk inside, you always full of some really wonderful, what should I say, the yellow and gold and things, colors
like
going in
yeah,
there.
fantastic.
And so it's in there, it's sort of semi-tropical and full of like adventure in there. And so there's a little girl standing right in front of Uncle Robin's room. So it's sort of beginning of my abstract and my figurative beginning to interplay together. And this
Beautiful.
one.
Just beautiful.
And so that was so, and the face, it looks like a little bit cartoonish because as a kid, you think about your face is looking slightly, you know, you don't want to be too literal. And it's sort of, and it's big, you feel like you were just so It's almost the size of the
I
child.
say the painting is very large. The child in the painting is
Yeah.
probably larger than a human
Right,
child.
so it's a 48 by 36.
Yeah.
So the other one is also 48 by 36. So together, so like diptych. So the big Mari actually was like echoing this one. I say, gee, this little child has to grow. I need a big version of me, not just forever to be this young little girl.
Well,
so
and why don't you talk a little bit about what Mari means?
oh, Mari means truth, and it's like my name, like in Japanese. So my parents, my family call me Mari. So when I call Mari, I feel like that's really me.
That's
I
you.
get back to inside me. And so the other one painting, you see I'm wearing the winter coat. Originally it was painted wearing a summer white dress because I did that just because I thought white is my color and just to echo the little Mari. But it's winter, it was so cold. And it just didn't feel that was present. It wasn't right. It felt tropical, it felt like I was in Hawaii or something. I was island girl, but of Hawaii. But so the last minute, Boston City Hall, I need at least 2 weeks or actually a month to have the painting to be dry, right?
Yeah.
And that was 15 days before
Oh, and you just
that, and the one night before, I put it on this coat.
Yeah.
I have this same coat. I went outside, had my husband took a picture, but it was different color.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be a much richer color, so I have a different color, feel nice and warm, and still red instead of white,
Yeah.
reddish brown. So so that's my last minutes, and I was so happy because I wouldn't think what should I say, the original one will not be the best in show, but this
Really?
one. Yes, I think because this one echoes inside me. I think as far as a painting, that one might not be a bad painting, but this one is sort of physically feel connected and feel like more presence.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel like if I feel painting is right, it just almost have to be physically or emotionally connected, not
Yeah.
just a good painting. So that's
It's like, how do you know that it's done? That's always the big question, I feel like, for artists is like, when is a piece finished? And obviously for you, with this particular painting, it had to do with time.
right.
A little bit.
Right.
And I think that if you had done Big Maori all in white, it wouldn't have nearly had the impact since the little girl was in white.
Exactly.
And when you're talking Maori, meaning truth, it's sort of like, there's sort of the little girl's, she has her little girl naivety in this, but she's not naive. This older woman, she's not naive.
She's
Well, there's something very striking about seeing those two pieces together, too. There's a lot of power in seeing them together, and it's sort of like the past and present
yes.
existing.
The bright eyes in the one, and then the hidden eyes in this one, it's-
Yeah. But I like that the faces are both abstracted too. Like I know that for you kind of think about them as self-portraits in a way, but it's still not completely you. It's sort of
Yeah.
like the idea of
Right.
it's the idea of you, and it's kind of, you can't always
Exactly.
see yourself completely.
Yes, you're right.
I think
I
that's
wasn't really
cool.
looking in the mirror. I thought I have some composite image of myself, and sort of that into that. So a lot of times it's better. Sometimes you have to look in mirror and paint yourself like really, really. But sometimes you're doing these things. It's from all different images of yourself at that moment.
the painting takes over,
Right.
Yeah.
pretty much. Yeah.
Right. Do you
Yeah.
do self-portrait?
I've done some.
Yeah.
I'm not big on them.
But you could have like an abstract self-portrait. You could carve something and think that that's the essence of Jim.
I think every single work of yours is a self-portrait.
Well,
Right? Would that be
And-
exaggerating to say that?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like if you think about art, every piece you create is part of you in some way.
I'd rather reserve the term self-portrait for actually representing your face. I mean, everything has you in it, but
That's true.
but we can reserve that
Okay.
title for that.
He's like, I'm not going there.
Otherwise, it gets a little too touchy-feely.
I know.
So with your wood carvings, talking about the end point, how you know that it's done. How do you know? What's your feeling when something is complete?
Usually whether I want to spend more time on it or not.
That's fine.
But, I mean, the carving and the sanding, it's a lot of hours just when you finally get down just hand sanding and getting it right. But I think there comes a point where nothing you're going to do is going to improve it. Okay. Usually there's always, you always see something, oh, I need to work on this part, I need to improve this, need to touch that up. But when you look at it and say there's nothing to improve at this point, then it's like,
It's done.
Feeney.
Do you ever go back and edit or like rework stuff once you've shellacked something?
Not on my sculptures, I don't.
Okay.
Paintings,
Anything's
yeah.
fair game. Okay.
Sometimes I end up just overwork a little bit too much and look at the previous painting picture and say, oh gee, what did I do? Right, but I think it's just worth trying that because you're taking a risk. So you might do something unexpected.
I mean, that painting, the painting that I did with the plant, looking down at it, the bristly ox tongue, that was the 4th version.
Oh.
One on top of the other. It's
Oh,
just
wow.
like getting there and going, I've lost the light, sand it out, that's not big enough, sand it out, so.
I know, there's always
just-
an X-ray version.
You've
This
never
one
done.
X-ray will be in white.
But they do, I mean, they've done that in museums where they've gone back to like old master paintings and they can see where, things have been taken out or there used to be like a totally different painting under there. And so
Exactly.
you're just carrying on the tradition of
Well, I took
masters of art history.
I took a, what do you call it, classical realism drawing class years ago when I lived in Memphis, and that was, put the plaster cast up here and the teacher comes by and says, well, the lip is like a 1/4 inch too far this way,
Oh,
and so
wow.
you erase it. Anyway, the point is that you can get anything you want if you're willing to take the time and to change it. And I used to think about Sargent, who his work is just so amazing. And then I felt so good when I realized, or when I read, that sometimes he would scrape a face out 18 times before he would
Oh,
get it.
wow.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's like,
And that's the thing, and
all right.
his paintings look so loose and free and like, oh, it just
Totally.
happened.
That's right. So, if you're willing to spend the time.
Yeah.
There's something about oil you could just do.
Now you work in oil. Are your paintings in oil as
They
well?
are.
Me too.
Okay. Do you ever do acrylic or any other?
I try, but I never feel that's part of me. It's I feel like I'm kind of physical painter. So the oil feel like your extension of yourself because applying is such a pleasure. And when I apply the acrylic, I don't feel, of course maybe there's some new gels and things you could feel that, but I still feel kind of plastic to me.
It doesn't have that nice fluid
Right.
motion.
Yes.
I'll use acrylic a lot
You do, huh?
in the beginning of a painting, just sort of to lay down images and to draw with it and that sort of thing, and then work with oil over that. The same with gouache, I'll use gouache with the same thing and then fix it and then paint over it with oil, but I prefer oil.
Awesome. So we have about 4 minutes left. Something that we talk about in creative process, and I think we've actually talked about both of your creative processes pretty extensively in a very short period of time. But so you clearly find inspiration in nature, and you're finding inspiration sort of internally. How do you record your inspirations? Do you keep a journal, or do you take photographs when you're out walking around?
I have thousands of photographs
Wow.
of flowers and these footscapes and the weeds, and I go through them and I say, oh, that's a good composition, or we can crop it and make that a good composition. So on that level, that's what I do. In terms of the wood, it's really get out your tools and start clearing the bark off of it and seeing where it goes.
See what happens.
And it's much more of a spontaneous effort
Yeah.
in that. I don't have preconceived ideas of what I'm going to do with sculpture,
Interesting.
whereas with painting, they're much more preconceived.
That's really interesting. What about you, Jenny?
For me, it really depends on what kind of work and how I feel that day. So it really, when doing abstract, I basically just looking at the blank canvas and just attack.
Just whatever happens.
Just
yeah.
whatever happened.
I like that word, attack.
I must say I mellowed. I used to be like really fast, bang, 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 and thought it's done. But nowadays, I think I'm feel like a little bit more internal. I'm slow down my process to look to see what I really could do about it. But yes, there were times I would think about this idea, how I want it, project it on in my painting. In that case, I might give a little bit more thought about it before I do it. But it never the same like when I first approach. You always just let the painting grow and so they respond to your painting and to see what you could do could get your own, voice out.
Yeah.
Right, and
That's funny because
I think you're completely opposite.
but the thing is that I'm constantly telling myself, just paint it. You have enough images in your head. Just do it and see where it goes like that. And then before long, I'm measuring this and measuring that, and making things.
I am slowing down. Yeah, so I try to look
So you're
at
starting
things.
to measure?
Yeah, because I don't take measures, but I want to be a more thoughtful painter instead of more emotional painter.
Yeah.
Like I think you need both.
That's an interesting shift
Yes.
to take. I'm interested to see what happens. So if people wanted to see more of your paintings, Jenny, can they visit your website?
Yes,
And what's your website?
Jenny Olsen OLSEN.com.
Fantastic. And Jim, you don't have a website, but can they visit your studio? How can people see your work? Or do you have any shows coming up?
Well, let's see. I've put some pieces out for some other shows that I haven't gotten a response yet. I'll have one piece in the new members show.
Excellent.
One of my sculptures. I will have a website soon. I have someone who's working with me on putting that together. It's,
Fantastic.
yeah. So it's been on the prio list for 20 years now, and I
Excellent.
think it's finally
Finally gonna happen?
I think it's finally going to happen. It needs to.
Well, until May 25th, you can see both of their work at our National Prize Show, which is the Catherine Schultz and University Place Galleries. And